A Doberman puppy, locked inside a plastic bucket, and the moment I saw it, my stomach turned cold. I couldn't understand how a human being could do that. If someone didn't want a dog, they could have left it by the roadside, tied it somewhere safe so a passerby might find it. But to trap it in a bucket and hang it out there under the sun wasn't just cruelty. It was a slow execution, but that wasn't the worst part. What came next, I still can't forget. It was late summer in Ridgefield, North Carolina, the kind of afternoon where the air feels heavy, almost sticky, the heat pressing down like a damp blanket. I was 41, an age where you think you've seen enough of life's quiet cruelties to stop being surprised. My days were predictable. I ran a small carpentry shop at the end of Main Street, started every morning with coffee and a nod to the neighbors, and listened to the cicadas buzzing in the oak tree behind the yard. That sound was like Ridgefield's heartbeat, steady, familiar, harmless. But that afternoon something broke the rhythm. Not with noise, but with a sight that didn't belong. From a distance, something hung from a low branch of that same oak. Round. Transparent. Catching the sunlight in strange shifting fragments. At first, I thought it was just the neighborhood kids, another one of their dumb pranks, maybe hanging up an old toy or paint bucket. I sighed, half annoyed, and walked closer. But each step slowed, then stopped. The irritation drained out of me, replaced by something colder. Something that crawled straight up my spine. The bucket, a clear plastic one, the kind you buy at hardware stores for mixing paint, was hanging by its metal handle from the branch, rocking gently in the wind. And inside, behind that sun-bleached haze of plastic, something moved. I squinted. My heart started to hammer. Then I saw it. A tiny Doberman puppy, barely a month old, curled into itself in a shallow puddle of yellowish liquid. Its black and tan fur was soaked, clinging to the bones underneath. Its ears drooped, and its eyes, those huge glassy eyes, were fixed on me through the plastic wall. That look stopped me cold. It wasn't wild fear, it was confusion, pure aching confusion. As if it was asking, what did I do wrong to deserve this? The smell hit me when the wind shifted sharp and sour ammonia and sun-baked plastic. I swallowed hard. The back of my throat burned. There was a note taped to the side of the bucket with clear packing tape, the paper fluttering in the heat. Black marker letters, messy and cruel. Take it, I don't want it. For a moment, Ridgefield went silent. No cicadas, no lawnmower hum, no kids shouting down the block. Just the ringing in my ears and the pounding in my chest. The bucket swayed. Light flickered across the puppy's tiny face. It panted weakly, tongue lolling out. The puddle inside caught the sun, turning the bucket into a glass prison, one that trapped heat, air, and life itself. I remember gripping the water bottle in my hand so hard that the plastic bent. The heat from it seared my palm like a warning, or maybe an order. I didn't think, I just moved. "It's okay, little one," I whispered, voice shaking. "I've got you now." I reached up and grabbed the handle. The metal was scorching hot. It burned my skin. My hand slipped twice. Bark scraped my arm. A sliver of oak tore my sleeve. Then, with a harsh snap, the wire came free. The bucket dropped into my arms, heavier than I'd expected. I knelt on the grass heart, pounding. The puppy trembled, its claws scraping the bottom, trying to find something solid to hold on to. It looked up at me, eyes glistening under the afternoon sun. And in that moment, I knew if I walked away now that life would fade before nightfall. I pressed my hand against the hot plastic. "Hold on, kid," I murmured, my voice barely a breath. "You're not dying here, not today." I carried the bucket down the gravel road toward home. The sunset spilled over the grass like melted honey, but all I could feel was anger pressing in my chest. The bucket rattled with every step, the sour stench of urine rising, stinging my nose. Still, I didn't stop. The puppy inside trembled non-stop, eyes half closed, breathing thin as a thread. My house sat at the end of the hill, a small white wooden home with a porch and 3 worn steps. When I was only a few feet from the door, I heard the faint shuffle of Claire's slippers on the floor. She appeared in the doorway, still holding a dish towel, eyes widening when she saw me, or rather what I was carrying. "Good Lord, Evan, what on earth are you holding?" Her voice carried both surprise and caution. I set the bucket down on the porch tiles, leaning forward trying to catch my breath. "It's a puppy," I said. "Someone locked it in this thing and hung it from an oak branch down the road." Claire stepped closer, then stopped as the smell hit her. She covered her mouth and backed away. "Oh, God, it reeks, Evan. You can't bring that thing inside." I looked up, my voice rough from exhaustion. "Claire, it's dying." She stared at me, her face twisting in disbelief. "Do you have any idea what it might be carrying? Fleas, ticks, rabies." "I'm not letting that thing in our bathtub." I gave a small tired laugh, one without joy. "What do you want me to do then?" "Leave it out there to die." The air turned heavy. Even the cicadas outside seemed louder, shriller. I crouched and lifted the lid. A faint breath rose from the puppy, the smell of ammonia and sun mixing until my eyes burned. I reached in carefully. Its body was limp, hot to the touch, frighteningly light. Claire took another step back, voice trembling. "Evan, don't you dare bring that thing in here." I didn't look at her again. I just walked inside. The door bumped against the wall behind me. The clean scent of wood polish and soap in the house was instantly replaced by the sour smell that clung to the puppy's fur. I walked straight to the bathroom, the one Claire kept spotless, almost obsessively. White tiles, folded towels, everything perfectly arranged. When I set the puppy in the tub, I knew I'd crossed a line. Claire stood at the doorway, arms folded tight across her chest. "Have you lost your mind? This is our home, not a rescue shelter." I turned the faucet, tested the water with my wrist. Warm. The sound filled the room, echoing softly against the tile. The puppy flinched, letting out a weak whimper. "It's okay, little one," I whispered. "It's just water. You'll feel better soon." I found an old bottle of dog shampoo under the sink, the one my brother had left years ago when we watched his beagle. The scent of soap rose up clean and faintly sweet, and for some reason it made my chest ache. Claire still hadn't moved. "Evan, it's filthy." "Do you have any idea how much bacteria?" I said nothing. The water turned murky yellow, swirling down the drain. I ran my hand gently along its back. Beneath the tangled fur I could feel every rib. It was barely more than skin wrapped around breath. And then I realized it wasn't shaking anymore. Its body went still, eyes closed as if surrendering to the warmth. After a long moment it exhaled softly, a sound like someone releasing a nightmare. I shut off the water and wrapped it in a towel. Its soaked fur pressed against me, smelling of soap and faint, stubborn life. Claire watched her expression softening for a heartbeat. Then her voice came quieter but edged. "So, what now?" I sat down, cradling the puppy in my lap. It curled closer to my chest, searching for warmth. "I'll feed it," I said. "Then tomorrow, take it to the vet." She folded her arms tighter. "You said I'll, not will." Her tone was sharp wounded. I met her eyes. "If you want to call me, that's fine, but this animal isn't dying under my roof." She didn't reply, just turned and walked away down the hall. Her perfume lingered in the air, mixing with soap and silence. I sat there alone in the damp bathroom, the puppy's tiny body curled in my hands. It lifted its head and licked my finger dry, weak but warm. That one small gesture was enough to tell me I'd done the right thing. I looked down at the little life drifting into sleep and whispered, "You're safe now, kid. I promise. You'll never be left behind again." That night our house was quiet, too quiet. Not the kind of calm that settles in after a long day, but the thick, uneasy silence that feels like the walls themselves are listening. The faint scent of dog shampoo and warm water still lingered in the air. I made myself a cup of coffee, though it was far too late for that. Claire sat at the dining table, eyes fixed on her phone screen, fingers still. She wasn't scrolling, just staring. Between us, there was something that hadn't been there before. A tiny soaked, trembling creature asleep in the laundry room. I could hear its faint breathing from where I sat. Uneven, fragile, but steady. And for a moment that sound felt like the only living thing left in the house. Claire was the first to break the silence. "So, you're really going to keep it?" A simple question, but her tone made the air colder. I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window instead at the faint reflection of the neighbor's porch light, and beyond that the oak tree where I'd found it hanging. "I just want it to live," I said, quietly. Claire sighed, setting her phone down with a soft click. "Evan, you can't take in every sad story you come across. We agreed no pets." I looked back at her eyes, tired but calm. "I'm not keeping it," I said. "I'm saving it." For a moment, everything froze. Then she turned her gaze away, and I knew that was the end of the conversation. I sat there listening to the clock tick on the wall. Outside, the wind brushed the curtains against the frame, the kind of silence that gets inside your bones. I don't know how long I stayed there, but when I finally stood, it was close to midnight. I opened the laundry room door. Light from the hallway spilled across the tile floor. In the corner on the old towel I'd laid out, the puppy was curled up tight like a tiny ember, still holding on to warmth. It stirred when the door creaked, lifting its head. Those dark brown eyes caught the weak golden light. I sat down beside it, careful not to startle it. "Go back to sleep, kid," I murmured. "There's nothing to be afraid of anymore." It blinked slowly, then rested its head against the tip of my shoe. That small, innocent gesture hit something deep inside me. I laid my hand gently on its back. Felt the faint, rhythmic tremor of breath beneath my palm. And something inside me softened. A piece of myself I didn't know was still alive. That fragile life right there somehow made me believe in kindness again. Behind me, footsteps creaked. Claire stood in the doorway, her shadow stretching long across the wall. She didn't speak. We just looked at each other through that soft yellow light, and between us lay the little life that had changed the air around us. Then she turned away. The door closed slowly with a dry, final click. I stayed there for a long while, my back against the wall. Beside me, the puppy stirred, nudged my hand with its nose, a silent thank you. I smiled, faintly whispering, just loud enough for it to hear, "How about Rook? Sound good to you?" Of course, it didn't understand, but its tail twitched just once, enough to warm something in me I hadn't felt in years. That night I slept on the floor beside it. The tiles were cold. My back ached, but in that half-dreaming haze, I could hear its small, steady breathing beside my ear, and for the first time in a very long time I slept in peace. The second night, after I brought Rook home, the air still felt heavy, like tension had seeped into the walls. I tried to ignore it. Spent the whole day at the workshop, came home to the same quiet shadow of Claire moving through the house. Dinner was silent. The only sound was the clink of her spoon against the plate, soft, metallic, and cold. Neither of us mentioned the dog. After washing the dishes, I opened the laundry room door. Rook lay where I'd left him, head resting on his front paws, eyes half closed. I sat beside him and ran a hand gently down his back. "Sleep, kid," I whispered. "Tomorrow it'll be better." His tail flicked once, then he curled tighter into himself. That tiny gesture of trust hit me harder than I expected. It felt like life had handed me a fragile chance to make amends for all the years I'd looked away. I went back to the living room and turned on the TV, but nothing stuck. The sound barely registered. Claire walked past, once gave me a look I couldn't read, then disappeared into the bedroom without a word. At some point, I must have fallen asleep on the couch. When I woke, the TV was off. The house was drenched in darkness, the kind that hums in your ears. Moonlight poured through the window silver and soft pooling across the floor in blurred patches. My neck ached as I straightened up. Out of habit, I looked toward the spot where Rook had slept the night before, right beside my shoes. Empty. I shot upright. Rook. I called softly, my voice cracked from sleep. No sound, just the faint hiss of wind slipping through the cracks in the doorframe. I walked to the laundry room and flipped the switch. The towel was still there. The bowl of water was untouched. But the corner was empty. A chill crawled up my spine. My chest tightened like a hand had clamped around it. No. No, that's not possible, I muttered. All the doors were locked. I checked. Back door latched, front bolted. No gap big enough for a puppy to squeeze through. I started calling louder now, my voice echoing through the house. Rook, come here, boy. Silence. I moved quickly down the hallway, flipping on lights one by one. The brightness stabbed at the darkness, but it didn't help. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Living room empty. Kitchen empty. Under tables, behind chairs, nothing. I opened the front door. Cool night air swept in. The street outside was asleep, only the sound of crickets, the faint hum of the power lines. Moonlight washed everything in a pale, ghostly white. The yard, the trees, the old fence down the road. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. The beam cut through the dark, sweeping across the lawn, the fence line, the bucket I still hadn't thrown away. Everything was still. Too still. Rook, I shouted. My voice broke apart in the night and vanished. All I could hear was gravel crunching beneath my boots and the rasp of my own breathing. In my mind, I saw that bucket again, the trembling shadow trapped inside those pleading eyes, and guilt hit me like a wave. Because now for the first time I was terrified I'd failed him. A soft noise behind me made me spin. Just a cat somewhere in the neighbor's yard. My flashlight caught only the shadow of the oak tree stretching long and black across the grass like veins under the moon. "Oh, God," I whispered. "Where are you, little one?" I followed the fence line, sweeping the light over every dark corner. Sweat chilled on my skin, my shirt clinging to my back. Only one thought kept looping in my head. If I don't find him, I'll never forgive myself. Behind me, I heard a door open. Claire stood in the doorway, clutching her robe tight. "Evan, what are you doing? Why are all the lights on?" I turned toward her out of breath. "He's gone. Rook's gone." She froze, then stepped forward, her expression flickering into something I couldn't quite name, shock, or something close to it. "Are you sure? Maybe he's under the table, or I've looked everywhere I said." She came closer, placed a hand on my arm, her voice suddenly soft. Too soft. Evan, calm down. Maybe he slipped outside. Maybe someone heard him crying and took him in. Something in her tone made me stop. Too gentle, too measured. Like she already knew. I looked straight into her eyes. For just a second I saw it. A flicker of guilt, thin and sharp as a crack in glass. I said nothing. Just turned away, grabbed the flashlight, and stepped off the porch. "Evan, where are you going?" "It's the middle of the night," she called. I didn't answer. The door closed behind me with a dry, final thud. The kind of sound that ends something you didn't realize was already breaking. I walked down the road, the flashlight beam cutting through the weeds. I called his name until my voice rasped, but Rook didn't come. And the Ridgefield night swallowed every sound. Every tree, every shadow seemed to whisper the same question, one I didn't want to face. Are you sure she didn't do something I don't know how long I wandered through the night? The flashlight dimmed until its beam was no more than a weak shimmer. The battery was dying. Ridgefield's midnight wind moved through the trees carrying the scent of wet earth and fog. Every rustle in the brush made my heart tighten. I kept calling his name until my throat went raw. No answer. No bark. No trace. By the time the clock struck 2, I stopped in the middle of the empty street, gasping for air. Only one thought kept circling in my head. I broke my promise. I turned back toward home, my legs heavy as stone. The small white house appeared in the dark lights on disturbingly quiet. When I pushed open the door, the wooden floor creaked underfoot. No sound. No movement. Only the tick of the wall clock, slow steady like a hammer inside my skull. I thought about calling Claire, but stopped. I had no fight left in me. I just wanted to sit down and let the emptiness swallow me whole. And then I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, in the sliver of shadow beside the cabinet, something small curled up tight. I blinked, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no. When I stepped closer, a pair of eyes glimmered in the moonlight streaming through the window. "Rook," I breathed. He was pressed against the wall body, trembling, fur-matted and damp. His eyes, wide, frightened, met mine. Maybe he'd found his own way home, or maybe God had led him back. I dropped the flashlight. It rolled, throwing an angled beam across the floor. I fell to my knees, hands shaking. Dear God, you're here. I reached out slowly, afraid any sudden move might make him vanish again. He whimpered, shrinking back, such a small broken sound it split my chest in two. "It's okay, buddy," I whispered. "It's me. You're safe now." The seconds stretched forever. Then he inched forward. One step, then another, until his head finally rested in the palm of my hand. I stroked him gently. The feel of his warm, damp fur under my fingers made my eyes sting. I pulled him into my arms, felt his tiny heartbeat flutter against my chest, and I cried. For the first time in years, I really cried. Not out of anger, not out of frustration, but because something small and fragile had found its way back, even when no one was waiting. When morning came, the sunlight poured through the porch window. I was still on the floor. Rook curled in my arms, his head resting against my wrist as if afraid to let go again. Claire said nothing. She walked past us, paused for a second, then kept going. The space between us felt like a canyon, silent, unbridgeable. I brewed coffee. The smell filled the kitchen, blending with the faint scent of soil, still clinging to Rook's fur. Through the window, I watched the oak tree standing tall in the yard, quiet like a gatekeeper to what had happened the night before. Then I heard a voice call out from across the fence. "Evan, you're up early." It was Harold Bennett, my neighbor. He was wearing his light jacket, holding his usual mug of tea. Beside him sat Duke, his old golden retriever. I stood, Rook still in my arms, and stepped onto the porch. "Morning, Harold." He smiled, that gravelly old voice steady. "Looks like you didn't get much sleep. Cute pup you've got there, a Doberman, huh?" I nodded. "Yeah. Poor little guy. Found him locked in a bucket down the road. Went missing all night yesterday." Harold frowned, took a sip of tea, and said slowly, "Really? That's odd. I thought you'd let him out." I froze. "What do you mean?" "Well, I got up for some water after midnight," he said. "Saw a light out front. Looked like Claire opened your door and set the dog down on the porch. I figured you two were letting him out to pee or something." The air went still. The morning breeze slipped through the fence, rippling the coffee in my cup. I looked at Harold but couldn't say a word. He must have sensed something because he quickly stammered, maybe I was half asleep. Probably nothing. "Sorry, Evan." I smiled faintly, though it never reached my eyes. "It's all right, Harold. Thanks." I turned back toward the house, the door closing behind me with a dull, heavy sound. Rook lifted his head, his clear brown eyes looking up at me, unaware of the storm that had just shifted the air. Claire stood in the hallway, a glass of water in her hand. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw me and Rook alive in my arms. Surprise. Guilt. Both flickered across her face. I stared at her for a long moment. The morning light cut through the blinds, painting her features in stripes of gold and shadow. Beautiful, but unfamiliar. The woman standing there was no longer the one I thought I knew. My voice came out low, calm, but edged like steel. "Harold saw you last night." The glass trembled in her hand. Water rippled over the rim. I didn't wait for her to answer. I walked past Rook, still pressed against my chest. Each step echoed on the wooden floor. I could feel her eyes on my back, but I didn't turn. All I said, voice flat and quiet, was, "We'll talk about this when you're ready to tell the truth." When I reached my room, Rook burrowed deeper into my arms and sighed softly. Through the window, the oak tree stood tall and solemn, bearing silent witness to everything that had happened. And in the golden light of that Ridgefield morning, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. That afternoon, sunlight poured through the window again, painting the wooden floor in that same pale gold hue, yet everything inside the house felt different. Claire hadn't spoken to me all morning. I hadn't spoken either. We moved around each other like strangers who happened to live under the same roof, a house filled with too many silences, too many ghosts. Rook lay in the corner of the living room, head resting on his front paws, eyes half closed. Every time I passed by, he lifted his head slightly, tail brushing once against the floor. He knew. Dogs always know when something's wrong. I sat on the old wooden chair, staring out the window. The oak still stood where it always had, steadfast and silent. It had seen everything the night Rook was trapped in that bucket. And now, this two people quietly imprisoning themselves inside their own pride and regret. I heard Claire's footsteps in the hallway, slow, dragging. When I turned, she was standing near the cabinet by the door, the same spot where I'd found Rook huddled 2 nights before. She knelt down, head bowed. Rook stirred, then slowly walked toward her. Claire reached out a trembling hand. Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I just don't know where to start. I didn't speak. I just watched." The afternoon light slipped through the curtains, falling across her face. And for the first time in years I saw her cry. Not angry tears, not frustrated ones, but something raw, something breaking open from deep inside. Her words came haltingly, each one heavy as though she had to pull them from her chest. "I did it," she whispered. "I was the one who opened the door. That night, while you were asleep, I took him outside. I closed my eyes, not out of surprise, but because hearing it confirmed what I already knew. And somehow that truth hurt worse." She went on, voice trembling. I knew it was cruel. But in that moment I only thought about my peace, my order. The house is clean controlled. When you brought him in, wet, filthy, shaking, I didn't see a life that needed saving. I just saw chaos, disease. I was scared, and I was angry that you chose him instead of me. Her hands shook. Rook sat quietly beside her, just watching. She took a shaky breath, then confessed, voice barely above a whisper. I opened the door. He looked back at me, those eyes, and I still closed it. When the latch clicked, it felt like my heart dropped with it. I lay awake after that, listening to the wind, hearing him in my head. When you ran out to look for him, I wanted to tell you. But I couldn't. I was a coward, Evan. A coward who became no better than the person who left him in that bucket. Her words cut deep, not like a blade that draws blood, but like one that keeps slicing long after it's gone. I stood and walked toward her. She didn't look up. Tears dripped from her chin onto the floor, darkening the wood. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady, too steady. I was angry with you. I still am. But there's one thing I can't deny: Rook came back. Not by chance. He came back because he still believed someone here would open that door for him. Claire lifted her head, eyes red and swollen. I don't deserve that. I don't understand why he isn't afraid of me. And then something happened that made me stop breathing. Rook, the same little dog who once trembled at every sound, stepped closer. He sniffed her hand, and then licked it, a small trembling gesture but full of trust. Claire broke. She cradled him, pulling him close, sobbing so hard I thought she might crush him. But Rook didn't move. His tail flicked once lightly, forgivingly. That sight made my throat close. A part of me wanted to walk away, leave them alone to mend whatever needed mending. But I stayed watching because I wanted to remember this moment. The moment forgiveness happened without a single word. When her tears finally slowed, I sat down beside her. The three of us, man, woman, and dog, sat quietly in the golden light of the dying day. I placed a hand on her shoulder. My voice came low, gentle. We can't change what's already done, but we can choose what comes next. Yesterday you closed a door. Today you can be the one who opens it. Claire turned to me, her eyes still wet, but lighter somehow. You still want me here, after all this? I glanced at Rook, then back at her. I think I said softly, Rook just answered that for both of us. She let out a broken laugh through her tears and stroked Rook's head. In her eyes, for the first time in years, I saw real tenderness again. Outside the window, the sun dipped low, brushing against the oak's branches. The leaves shivered gently in the breeze. Maybe the wind had finally changed. A month after I found Rook, spring came to Ridgefield. The oak branches outside the porch began to bud again, sunlight stretching across the old wooden planks, soft and golden. And the house, once so still, was now full of small sounds of life. Rook was strong again. No longer that shivering Doberman puppy trapped in a plastic bucket. His black and tan coat gleamed in the light, his ears stood tall, his eyes bright with mischief. Every morning when I opened the porch door, he'd dart into the yard, circle the oak, then tug gently at the cuff of my jeans as if to say, "Come on, life's moving forward." I'd smile, lift my cup of coffee, and sit on the porch steps. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with damp earth and the warmth of new sunlight. Inside, Claire hummed quietly as she washed the dishes, a sound I hadn't heard in what felt like forever. Sometimes, when she bent down to stroke Rook's fur, I caught the quiet look they shared between two beings who had once hurt each other. There was no fear left, no guilt, only understanding, the kind of empathy people struggle to learn. But a dog seems to know by heart. One morning, Harold came over from next door holding a leather leash. For Rook, he said, "Duke doesn't use it anymore. That pup deserves a proper walk." I took it, smiling. Harold sat down on the porch steps, patting Rook's head. Then he glanced up at me, his grin soft and knowing. "You know, Evan, I haven't seen Claire smile this much in years. I think that little fella didn't just save the dog, he saved your marriage." I looked out toward the oak, sunlight flickering through its branches. Maybe, I said quietly, maybe we all just needed a reminder that kindness starts small. That evening, as dusk painted the windows in amber light, I sat in the living room with Rook curled at my feet, his head resting on my shoe, just like that first night. Across from me, Claire sat with her notebook open, pen moving slowly across the page, writing something I'd never seen her write before. A plan to start a small volunteer group for abandoned animals in Ridgefield. She looked up and asked softly, "What do you think of the name Open Door?" I looked at Rook, then back at her. "Perfect," I said. That weekend, we worked with Harold to clear the backyard, building a few makeshift shelters for the stray cats in the neighborhood. Rook ran in circles, barking and diving into cardboard boxes, making everyone laugh. Claire took out her camera and captured the moment, the late afternoon sun dirt on our hands, laughter, And right in the center of the frame, Rook had tilted eyes shining with that strange knowing light. That photo would later become the first one framed in our living room. Beneath it, Claire wrote in brown ink, "He came back to us so we could learn how to stay." That night, when the house had gone quiet, I sat beside the bed, watching Rook curled up on the floor. The front door was left slightly ajar, just a sliver of light breathing softly like the pulse of the home itself. "Thank you, Rook," I whispered, "for not giving up on us." He lifted his head, those brown eyes glowing faintly in the dark, then rested his chin on my foot and exhaled calm and steady. In that moment, I understood something. Life isn't about keeping things spotless or in order. It's about what we allow to live, what we let in even when it's messy, even when it scares us. If someone were to ask me what lesson that little Doberman left behind, I'd tell them this: no one's perfect. But all of us get a second chance if we're brave enough to open the door. And for me, a door truly opened that day. Not just for Rook, but for my own heart. If you're hearing this story, and you've ever come across a fragile life by the roadside, don't turn away. Because sometimes life is just testing to see if you're willing to open that door. Rook changed my life. He changed Claire's. And in his quiet way, he changed an entire small town. Maybe the dog you save will do the same for you. Have you ever rescued a dog? If you have, tell your story in the comments below. Because maybe, just maybe, your story will be the door someone else needs to open.